Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is our 63rd video in our Master Series, the 33rd video in our first phase processing, and the second video when we're talking about our compression, expansion, and things. I hope that last video made sense in basically at this point how simple that those applications usually are, unless I have serious problems or I really screwed up somewhere, that most of the time that the application is pretty simple at this point. The one thing that I didn't address is that a couple different things, but basically there's one point that I really wanted to address, is that at this point that if you start doing some compression, I told you later on, when we get done with our signal processing, for the most part, or our first phase processing, we're going to maximize the tracks. But, you know, when we're doing our compression, I'm doing this on different areas. So let's say this is an intro, this is a verse, this is a chorus, this is a bridge, whatever it is, that I'm going to do my work on those separately because they have different dynamic characteristics. If I turn this down a little bit and turn this one up a little bit to dramatize that, you know, a little bit, then it's real obvious that those sections have different dynamics. That this sections, I've gotten it, this file I have not processed, so you'll have to bear with me. It looks a little erratic. It might not look as good as it would, but I just wanted to give an example that if I'm going to start doing that work on these different sections, let's say that I do that work on this section, all of a sudden I've made it and it's gotten a little quieter. Well, I've just basically screwed up the dynamics between this section and this. I might do a little bit less on this one I might do none on, this one I might do a lot on for some dang reason, you know, and it's like now I've screwed up the dynamics. So for the most part, that when I go through and do this, that I'm really having to go through it and go one section at a time. So like if I've done this section and it was like this, and I'm really checking out what the level was, what the maximum level was on it, and I get done with it and it brought it down, but I've cut it out as a separate section like it's an intro, I want to make sure I can boost it back up as a whole back to where it basically was. So a lot of times that this can be kind of a difficult situation because there's even been times that I've gone through and I'll grab the original file from that I saved after my editing. So I've got my edited file, they've done all my flow editing and all that stuff too, and I'll drag it out onto another track and I'll compare it to the one that I've done all this work onto it up to this point to try to go back and match those levels, because it would be like I have this track here unedited down here, and I'd go back and listen to them A, B, and back and forth until, you know, I'll go, oh, I need to push that up a little bit, that one I need to bring down a little bit to match the levels of that original after editing, and that one I need to push up a little bit or down, and sometimes you got to fuss with that a little bit. See, now this is after I've done that compression work, any type of that work that I needed to do, or if I did some expansion or upwards expansion or upwards compression or anything like that, then I might have to go back and refuss that. It's tedious, it's a pain in the butt, but if you want your production to come out sounding as good as possible, it's something you need to take into consideration. This might seem like overkill to some people, but the more time you spend on little detailed things and making them sound as good as possible on each individual track, the better your production is going to come out sounding. It's just a given. So, you know, this is kind of a tedious pain in the butt aspect of that, but it's something I do. That way that I've got it done, I've got those sections, okay, I've matched it up to that original file that I've got done editing and those dynamics. Now that, you know, it's like, you know, really extreme example is there's an intro and it's going into this first verse and it's got this break that's a little bit louder and this other part that's a little bit louder. Now I need to go back and match that up to that edited file approximately that I thought I wanted things after I got done with my flow editing, and then I'm going to go through that whole thing and bounce that all together. Does that make sense? So that it's one file again. Now at that point that I'm basically done. I've done any compression work I need to do on, you know, sometimes it's even a phrase. Sometimes it might be just a short phrase like this right here or something. Sometimes it's a whole verse, a chorus, a section, a bridge section, and this can be with any instrument. because sometimes you got even a bass drum that one section it's quieter, one section it's louder, and that's an extreme example, but it can be like that. And spending the time to make sure it's back somewhat close to how you had wanted it done after you got done with your flow editing is where you want to try to get that back to again after you've done all this type of work. Because you might do that little bit of compression work trying to achieve something, but it starts throwing your dynamics out of whack because you've done it to this section, to that section, to that section, to that section, and now you've really screwed up the dynamics where it's not like you had set it up in your flow editing. So you don't really have to go back and revisit that stuff. And the best thing that I do is I drag that flow edited file, that edited file onto a track below it, A-B them back and forth, look at them, listen to them, and then take those sections, whatever sections I compressed and did any work on, that to match them up again to where they were like that file, that post edited file. So they're basically along the same lines, pretty close. Now I might have made some changes, or I might have made some artistic decisions and I wanted this a little bit louder. I don't know, I might have, but for the most part I probably want to match it up to that after I get done with any of my compression, expansion, gating, anything like that. I go back and revisit that and make sure it's done well. That way that at this point we're going to do, after this video, we're going to do a little bit of clarity evaluation, maybe a little bit of ADSR work to try to clean things up, and then for the most part we're going to do some noise reduction, and we're going to maximize the tracks. So when we maximize, that we're dealing with overall dynamics of the whole thing. So when we were doing this phase and with this compression, expansion, and whatever we might have been doing, we were dealing with problems in specific sections, like any section you might be having. So it's a pain in the butt, it's tedious work, and it's not glamorous, but it can really make your production shine. So peace, hope, love. Take the time to do it right, and I'll see you in the next video.